So, I had a meeting with the FBI and my client. We went to a diner in Midtown Manhattan and sat down with these two FBI agents. And it turned out that really what had happened in that case was that they had sent in an infiltrator, an agent provocateur, who was posing as just one of the young men at the mosque. He had recruited a group of 10 young guys, including my client, to go on paintballing trips in New Jersey, which the FBI characterized as military training. And he'd also begun initiating emails and forwarding these emails to the FBI. And so at one point in our conversation at this diner, the FBI slides a piece of paper across the table, and it's a printout of an email going around this group of 10 young friends, and they have highlighted in yellow something that my client supposedly wrote, and it was something along the lines of quote, "The loud ones don't threaten, the quiet ones start riots." And the FBI were saying, well, this is clearly code. This is clearly very ominous, and what's going on here? We'd like to know, from your client what this means exactly. And this is one of those surprises that comes up in any case, things that you haven't anticipated with your client. So we took a few minutes to go outside the diner and figure out what it was about. And then we came back a few minutes later, and we sit down, and I had to try to contain my laughter because I told the FBI that it was simply a joke about passing gas. That it was a group of young sophomoric guys joking about how the loud ones don't threaten and the quiet ones start rioting. But it's humorous. But at the same time, it's tragic because it's this sort of overinterpretation and dramatization of innocuous things that actually has traction in the court and can lead to people's lives being destroyed. And beyond that, the government has also, as we all know, criminalized very ordinary, other forms of ordinary and protected conduct, through the expansive use of the material support statute that's been used in criminal law to convict Muslims, that's been used in immigration law to deport them, or to use a combination in both criminal and immigration realms. It's criminalized charitable giving, so it's chilled a very essential right that belongs to all people living in this country, but the Muslim community in particular is no longer at full liberty to exercise that right. And it's also, the government has also capitalized at trial on the surrounding climate of fear and the demonization of these particular communities, and that's resulted in very real gains. I mean, I think the odds of acquittal, if you're defended in a federal criminal case, are never in your favor. But if you happen to be a Muslim defendant in a federal criminal case on terrorism-related charges, the odds of conviction go up dramatically. It's over 90% conviction rate for Muslims facing terror-related charges in federal courts. That's compared to something around the order of 80%, 75% in other cases. The government has also used extended pretrial solitary confinement in those cases. It's used sentence enhancements across the board in those cases. And then when you look at our prisons and the way Muslims are being processed through the prisons, it's hard not to notice the Gitmo-like conditions, the Guantanamo-like conditions in those prisons. Guantanamo isn't just something that happens abroad. From the beginning, it was imported and exported from Guantanamo. The practices at Guantanamo were migrated to Bagram and Abu Ghraib with the results that we all know of and that Mr. Clark addressed. They also migrated here to the military brigs in South Carolina, for example, where U.S. citizen Jose Padilla was held, where visa holder Al-Marri was held as well. Those same measures and methods were applied to them here in the United States and South Carolina. And then in parallel, we're also seeing a Guantanamization of our civilian prisons, where Muslims, convicted and held on terrorism-related charges are, incarcerated through the use of special administrative measures. Those SAMs are applied to them when serving time in maximum security or supermax facilities. We're also seeing Muslims being routinely placed in CMUs, communication management units. These are all, very unusual measures that aren't applied to the general population, but are being systematically applied to Muslims. So I think it's, I'm not saying that the policies and measures, did not net any, proverbial quote-unquote bad guys. what I want to draw our attention to is how connected all of these measures are. Whether be they measures that apply internationally, extraterritorially, or here in the United States or at Guantanamo, how all of them are connected in their overbreadth, in the ratio of innocents to, quote-unquote culprits, or being swept up in the dragnet. The common theme, to my mind, is that when it comes to Muslims, our government could afford to cast a very wide net. Because in the end, the lives and liberties of Muslims, seem cheap to them, easily sacrificed. And the government knew that it could do it at minimal cost, without fear of pushback or outrage. And so the overall trend has been towards, at least as far as the Muslim community is concerned, has been towards the normalization of these exceptional measures. Again, sentence enhancements and special administrative measures have become the norm. Even something as seemingly exceptional as the military commissions at Guantanamo. We've heard recently very mainstream, prominent political voices in our country publicly clamoring for the use of military commissions against individuals who were apprehended in the United States. For example, the accused Detroit Christmas Day bomber. People came out the next day saying, well, he should be held as an enemy combatant and tried in a military commission. We thought this was something that only existed at Guantanamo, but here it is migrating here. Targeted assassinations that Mr. Clark spoke about. We all know that it's been going on covertly for decades. No one here is naive enough to think that the U.S. government was not engaging in that sort of practice before. But the difference is that it's now being overtly claimed as a legitimate option. One that can be employed, not just in the abstract, but one that can be employed with no process against a U.S. citizen overseas. And in this instance, it happens to be a Muslim American, for now. So I think when you look at the sources of responsibility, of course there are the politicians and the pundits and the other demagogues who hope to reap the political profits of scapegoating. They bear a share of responsibility. But I also think that part of the responsibility is ours, because we've allowed it to happen as a community in a sense. Part of the responsibility falls on the community's leaders, who have been all too willing to engage with authorities on terms that the authorities have set, self-servingly set. And those same leaders have been far too desperate for a seat at the table of power, even if it's come at the cost of, accepting, the de-radicalization or other such questionable approaches to engaging, whole and wholly diverse human communities. So we have contributed to making it politically cost-free and even, profitable for decision makers to initiate and perpetuate these policies. And that's a hard thing for me to say and to accept. But I fear that it's true. So I think going forward, I think community organizers and attorneys and everyone else need to work hand in hand towards, as a first step, raising a minimal level of rights awareness within the most directly affected communities, so that people know that they can say no. They know what to do when they've been approached. To conclude, I do want to broaden things a bit. It's not exclusively Muslims who are being targeted. It's Muslim, Arab, South Asian communities, and more recently, many non-Muslim activists and anti-war activists have been targeted by these same policies, as recently as 2 weeks ago. So my hope for this coalition is that it will build bridges and alliances across the divides, that it will tap all the connections that we have failed to make so far, and that it will connect with other struggles and histories in ways that will lead to a broad-based movement. And I also hope that when the time comes and this particular battle is over, that we won't forget those who stood with us in our time of greatest need. Many of them might not share our faith, our origins, our values, our politics, or our lifestyles. But they chose to share our hardships, and they also chose to join our community. And so I really hope that that is a debt that we Muslims in America will not forget. Thank you.